Welcome back to Today's Point, the show where we dive deep into the issues shaping our world. I'm your host, Alex, and I have to say, it's a true honor to be joined by today's guest. She's a brilliant mind who has dedicated her career to understanding the complex forces behind global migration. Dr. Evelyn Reed, welcome.
Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we jump into the serious stuff, and trust me, we will, I have to ask, I saw a picture on your social media from last week. Did you actually try to bake a cake for your cat's 3rd birthday?
Oh, you saw that. Yes, I did. My daughter convinced me it was a must-do milestone. Let me tell you, what looks like a simple 2-layer cake for humans turned into a culinary catastrophe for a feline. The cat, Oscar, looked at it with pure disdain. It was humbling, to say the least.
Well, on today's point, we believe that humility and humor are the best ingredients for a good conversation. And on that note, we're pivoting from cat cakes to a much more complex topic that's been dominating headlines across the globe: the recent shift in U.S. immigration policy and the ongoing debate over border enforcement. It's an issue that touches on everything from national security to human rights, and it affects far more than just the people crossing the border. Dr. Reed, let's start with the big picture. We've seen a lot of headlines about a crackdown and new, more restrictive measures. What's the core of this policy shift, and how are the major political parties in the U.S. framing it?
That's the key question, Alex. On one side, you have political leaders, often from the Republican Party, who frame this issue primarily through the lens of border security and national sovereignty. They argue that a country must have control over its borders to maintain its rule of law. They point to the sheer volume of undocumented crossings, the strain on local resources, and potential security risks as justifications for stricter enforcement. Their focus is on deterrence and creating a more orderly, controlled system.
And what about the other side of the political aisle? The Democrats and their allies often seem to have a different perspective.
Exactly. The opposing viewpoint, typically from Democrats and more progressive groups, often centers on the humanitarian aspects and economic realities. They emphasize that many of these individuals are fleeing violence, poverty, or political instability and deserve compassion. They also highlight the economic contributions of immigrants, many of whom fill essential labor gaps and contribute to the economy. For them, the solution isn't just about enforcement, it's about creating more legal pathways and addressing the root causes of migration in other countries.
This isn't just a political debate, of course. It involves citizens and advocacy groups with a powerful voice. How do they see this issue?
This is where the conversation gets really dynamic. You have civil liberties and human rights organizations who are incredibly vocal. They argue that these crackdowns often violate due process and can lead to the separation of families. Their primary concern is the ethical and legal treatment of every person, regardless of their status. They believe that a nation's strength is also measured by its commitment to human dignity.
And what about the citizens who live in these border communities or who feel the direct impact? They must have a different perspective too.
Absolutely. It's not a monolith. You'll find citizens in border states who feel overwhelmed by the influx and worry about the impact on their schools, hospitals, and public services. Their perspective is often about practical, day-to-day challenges. Then you have other citizens, even within the same communities, who have long-standing relationships with immigrant populations and see them as integral parts of their local economy and culture. The reality on the ground is incredibly complex and often contradicts the simplified narratives we hear from politicians.
It sounds like the issue isn't about right or wrong, but about two competing sets of valid concerns: the nation's right to secure its borders versus the individual's right to seek a better life. Looking ahead, is there a path forward, a future-oriented solution that moves beyond this stalemate?
I believe there is. This debate, as you mentioned, is a global one, and the most productive path forward involves a few key elements. First, it requires a willingness from all sides to move beyond rhetoric and towards a comprehensive legislative solution that has been missing for decades. Second, it calls for international cooperation to stabilize the regions from which migrants are coming. And finally, it requires us to invest in smart, technology-driven border management that is both effective and humane. The future isn't about building higher walls, it's about building smarter and more compassionate systems that recognize the reality of global mobility.
Dr. Reed, that was incredibly insightful. It's rare to hear such a balanced view that genuinely considers all these different perspectives. You've given our global audience a much deeper understanding of an issue that's often oversimplified.
Thank you, Alex. The conversation is never simple, but it's always vital.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. We've all learned a great deal. If our viewers are interested, where can they find more of your work?
My articles and policy papers are available on the think tank's website, and I'm also active on social media. I'd love to continue the conversation there.
Fantastic, and I sincerely hope that our paths cross again soon. Perhaps when we're discussing that comprehensive solution you mentioned. Thank you again for your time and expertise.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to our listeners at home and around the world, thank you for tuning in to Today's Point. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning the headlines.